Ellie is from Cornwall. She wants to carry out her mom's dream of becoming a fashion designer, and though her mom suffered a nervous breakdown in London and left the mortal coil of her own devices, mother and daughter are still connected. Ellie can sense spirits from the past. Our girl gets into the London College of Fashion, and after a fair warning from Gran about the dangers of the big city, Ellie and her Beats headphones take the train up to Soho to start a new adventure. Before even settling down at her dorm, Ellie receives unwanted attention from her creepy cabbie. At the local Irish pub, a kid makes a lewd pass at her roommate Jocasta, who knows how to reject him in a kind but saucy manner. She passes his attention to Ellie, who possesses no such skill, and responds by hiding downstairs. Jocasta brings a late-night booty call to their shared space, so Ellie and her besties evacuate their room in favor of a loud party in the common area. After facing rejection from the quiet girl, an entitled prick makes the universal blowjob sign, and John, Ellie's soon-to-be stalker, fends him off. There's a lot of this throughout the story, but don't worry, it gets worse from here. This film sort of makes the argument that cities are somehow massive hubs for sinister men, when the countryside is really no better. As someone who went to college in bumfuck nowhere USA and now lives in a big shitty, creeps of all kind are everywhere. It's just a matter of density. Ellie was really sheltered in Cornwall, so sheltered that she'd never previously been subject to a roll call.
Eloise Turner?
It's Ellie. Sorry, what was the question?
Are you present?
So yeah, when you drop the inexperienced country mouse into the party capital of the UK, she is going to be overwhelmed by the overt flirty nature of it all. But knowing that she wants a quieter, less chaotic environment, one where she can sleep, Ellie finds a cranky old lady with an available bedsit and somehow manages to front 4 months of rent to secure some housing. The bistro sign outside provides 3 perpetually flashing flavors of mood lighting, and our protagonist hops excitedly into bed to get some shut-eye. Through the use of her psychic abilities, Ellie connects with another young woman from the 60s. She's beautiful, she's confident, and she's experienced in the ways of men. Or so she projects. And in a single evening, Sandy wins the favor of a successful talent manager, Jack. The next night, he takes her to an audition and convinces her that he's invested for the long term. Sandy's well on her way to becoming a massive headliner on the London scene. Ellie gets weirdly sidelined in her own story. Despite being alive and somewhat well, our girl is the one who haunts the ghosts in this dream realm. She bears witness to Sandy's maltreatment and vicariously experiences her descent into hell. There's the initial thrill of creating mild chaos with a man of the tall, dark, and franken-faced variety, the letdown in realizing that all of these men wearing the same black suit only really want one thing from their female performers, the loss of self-worth resulting from the perpetual dance of men partying in despair, the attempt to break free of her circumstances whilst observing all of the women who've fallen into that same trap, and finally, acceptance of her harsh, exploitative existence. Well, not that last one. Ellie mostly tries to ignore everything as her nightmares become reality. According to this film, there are 2 types of men. Possibly 3, but the third one is not explored, at all. There's the creepy, lascivious guys who are just out for a mechanical interaction with your body, or the well-meaning stalker guy friends who are hoping for something more. That's it. There's no in-between or variation. Men are black or white, good or evil, one or t'other. They're simple, is what this film is suggesting. That's not my experience of men, but my data set of 1 is rather limited. Hold up. I was wrong. Ellie has an absentee father, so that is a 4th option. This movie came out in the aftermath of the MeToo movement. It kind of fits within the sensitive, feeling guilty for being a man, feminist think piece genre, which includes such films as Barbie, Poor Things, Nightmare Alley, and the creepy uncle of them all, Men. While all of these films are pretty on the nose about their feminist politics as a direct result of their times, Guillermo del Toro, Yorgos Lanthimos, Noah Baumbach, and Alex Garland all have work beyond these examples that feature women in a wide variety of contexts and roles. Edgar does not. Outside of Olivia Colman's Cornish cop and Sean's mom, I struggle to think of a significant female character who is not the main dude's girlfriend. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently bad about the girlfriend role. Liz, for example, enjoys the same level of characterization as Sean and Ed, and she actually challenges her partner in a way that this limp pushover stalker guy never questions Ellie.
I can't begin to imagine how hard this must be for you. But we can't afford to fall apart.
I'm just saying that this film, in the context of all of Edgar Wright's mostly enjoyable body of work, just saying that this film is a little virtue signaling, especially considering his follow-up. Oh, sorry. And speaking of Ellie's nice guy stalker, what is this really? On the one hand, he's kind and understanding. On the other, he keeps poking his nose into her business and randomly showing up in her vicinity for plot reasons. I could be super wrong about this as someone who never had the experience of being a desperate young man, but would his character not either A, get exhausted with her weirdness/rejections and just fuck off, or B, turn out to be a deranged obsessive guy who lingers around and ends up being the film's final boss? Instead, the writers go with, nah, he's cool. He's an ally. Sure. There's also this scene at the end where Ellie is showing her work at what I presume to be the school's fashion show. Her stalker is in her class. If this is a university function, why isn't he also presenting his work? It's entirely conceivable to put John backstage preparing his stuff while still giving Ellie her flowers for surviving her ordeal. One of the great things about Avatar is that there is a wide array of awesome girls. They're powerful, but they all have vulnerabilities, and with the exception of Suki, they all have decent characterizations. The exact same thing can be said for the boys. Sokka and Zuko have really great character arcs, Aang is surprisingly capable of violence despite his strongly held pacifist beliefs, and Uncle Iroh, the embodiment of wisdom and a grounding figure in the series, is a bit of an old perv. I maintain that good writing for women is generally a good indication that the writing is good for everybody. This film and the films of this genre beg the question, if the writing is not good for men, is it actually good for everyone else? Edgar loves a good comedic relief bully. Here we have Jocasta, who poo-poos Ellie's self-made outfit and just generally gives her a hard time for being a country bumpkin. She wears clothes from a now popular designer, but claims that the fit was from before the designer became a sellout. When Ellie gets attention from the other girls for revealing how her mom died, Jocasta attempts to ride those coattails by saying her uncle also killed himself. Oh, and she roofies Ellie and John. This comes off more as a necessity of the plot, and less as an appropriate character choice. Jocasta lacks a strong sense of self. She's jealous and insecure compared to Ellie's awkward, quiet confidence. But Ellie is also trying to find herself.
Who are you wearing? Eloise T, of course.
E.T.
Ellie Turner.
She's obsessed with the 60s and directly appropriates Sandy's look. So it's reasonable for one girl to explore her identity, but that same concept can be trite and shallow for another. Sorry, what I meant to say was, it's okay for Ellie because by the end of the film, her style becomes a collaborative evolution between her Cornish roots and the big city fashion of a 60s Soho. After getting drugged at the Halloween party, Ellie gets stuck amidst the present and the past. She takes John up to her room to presumably pop her cherry, but instead becomes entangled in a non-consensual knife play between Jack and Sandy. She witnesses the brutal stabbing of her spiritual guide and falls into a frantic state. The next day, still reeling from a lack of sleep and Jocasta's pharmaceutical intervention, Ellie creates chaos on campus, tries to elicit action on a cold case from the local police, and manufactures a scenario where an elderly alcoholic gets killed by a car that could only have possessed an intoxicated driver to unpurposefully hit this fairly visible static target. While Ellie is on a call to Gran, John comes running down the street looking for her. Our protagonist, still freaking out and slipping back and forth from the dream realm, requests to be taken home, to Cornwall. They go back to the haunted bedsit to retrieve her possessions, and realizing she's skint, Ellie attempts to get reimbursed for the exorbitant deposit she put down. The up until now cranky old woman kindly and generously invites Ellie in for tea and reveals that the cops have been snooping around. It finally occurs to our girl that the old lady sitting before her is none other than the woman of 1,000 pseudonyms, Alex, Sandy, Alexandra. As it turns out, Sandy did not die in that horrific stabbing. She took inspiration from that night and decided to murder all of her visiting Johns. Do you get it? It's an inverse of the dead hooker trope. Don't you find this empowering? Last Night in Soho makes the suggestion that murdering people is more acceptable than abusing people. Don't get me wrong, they're both bad. In murder's favor, it's kind of a one-and-done situation, while abuse tends to be ongoing. Conversely, and as far as I'm aware, revivification is not a thing. It is possible to end abuse, but it is very difficult, especially in a situation like this. But do the ends justify the means? In a pragmatic sense, no. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this does not permanently end sex trafficking for all humankind, let alone that part of London. In a cathartic sense, is it worth the looming threat of imprisonment and a lifetime of reflecting on the horrors you committed in retaliation for the horrors inflicted upon you? Is all of that worth the catharsis? Possibly. I don't presume to know your life. And this is where the convoluted character decisions get real gnarly. Sandy poisons Ellie and then stabs John in the hallway. Somehow, Ellie gets chased up the stairs by this knife-wielding maniac, and she flees to her room where the astral projections of Sandy's all-male victims beg our leading lady for help. She resoundingly rejects them, and then Sandy takes more abuse from a phantom Jack, to which she declares,
I didn't want any of this.
Sandy hears the police sirens, and on an emotional level concludes that she is now done pursuing Ellie, and, well, life, and takes a knife to her throat. Ellie stops her from completing the mission, but a fire that was brewing downstairs, for reasons, has now reached their room, and Sandy is happy to be engulfed in flames. She ushers Ellie to get out and save the boy she all too happily stabbed 3 minutes ago. Just to be clear, this woman was entirely prepared to kill 2 children because the police stopped by to do a wellness check on someone they believed to be a paranoid young person, not dig up an investigation into murders from a million years ago. She also pursued said young person despite having already poisoned her, all whilst a fire was visibly breaking out in her home. After receiving the ghost of Jack from Ellie's tenuous psychic projection, an old and bitter Sandy makes an incredible emotional breakthrough and gives up her life so that she can continue to haunt Ellie. So to answer the question from before, this is such totes amazeballs writing. I don't know what I was on about before. In defense of this well-intentioned but incredibly convoluted film, the through line about wrestling with the experiences and trauma of the preceding generations and then using that to aid your journey through life, that is executed pretty well. Ellie's mum is absent during her time in Soho, but appears in support of her daughter for the fashion show, and then Sandy takes her place in the mirror and blows Ellie a kiss. Instead of being perturbed by the presence of a mass murderer in her psychic arena, Ellie taps the reflective surface to say hey. She's happy to have the wisdom and knowledge that Sandy could provide in the same way that she holds on to the love of her mom. Anyway, feel free to haunt me in the comments. Bye!